Hi, everyone. Apologies for the late start. We're having some technology difficulties. I had to like hard shut off my laptop and start it back up. Well, anyway, I'm glad to be here. Glad to be here today, wherever you are, to go on this Public Health Live to talk more about the federal applications for public health people out there. And I have a wonderful expert, Daphne Kennebrew, who knows a lot about it. And before she shares a little bit about her story and her experience with public applications, I just want to ask, how are you doing?
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Amari. Thank you so much for asking me to be a part of your podcast today. I'm doing okay. I'm recovering from COVID-19. Still got a little cough and a little breathlessness going up the stairs, but I'm doing okay. And I'm so glad I was able to be with you here with your audience today so I could share a little insight on the federal government experience, the platform.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we are happy to hear that you are recovering and that you can make time to come on today and to share more about your experiences and definitely be a resource for a lot of people out there. Everyone that's listening, watching this, be sure to subscribe to the channel if you've not as yet, and share with a friend. There's going to be a lot of great value that comes out to this episode. And I know that anyone that's interested in any type of federal public health type of position is going to get value from this interview conversation, however you want to view it. But I'm looking forward to it. And if you all have any questions at any point in time, feel free to drop those in the chat. I will raise those to Daphne as we go along our conversation. I do have a few questions from that I brainstormed, but be sure to leave a like. Definitely helps get the video out to more people. It shows that this is a good, engaging, helpful video. And Daphne is joining us from Liv Career Consulting Services, where I've had Olivia on the podcast before. I can't remember which episode. I should have looked up that before, but regardless, I'll put it in the show notes. But a very, very wonderful organization that's doing a lot of work to connect public health people into public health jobs. And I'll let Daphne speak a little bit about her experience and where she's coming from to give us all the expertise in federal public health applications.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Amari. I would like to start out by saying I am a twice graduate of the University of Georgia, born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia, and I attended the University of Georgia, where I obtained a bachelor's degree in educational psychology and a master's degree in vocational rehabilitation counseling. I worked for the state of Georgia for 8 years prior to going into federal employment. So while I was at the state of Georgia, I worked in various positions ranging from vocational rehab counselor. I was the coordinator of a traumatic brain injury federal demonstration grant that the state of Georgia had, where we had a 3-year demonstration grant where we brought in experts to improve services for persons living with traumatic brain injury and their family, and just to improve the status of their living in the state of Georgia. And I also worked as an institutional resource development specialist in the adult technical education system for the technical colleges in the state, Atlanta Technical College. I did that for about 2 to 3 years. So I worked off and on in various positions with the state of Georgia. Decided I would try my hand at federal employment, and I applied for a federal vocational rehabilitation counselor position at the Department of Veterans Affairs here at the Veterans Benefit Administration here in Atlanta, Georgia. I worked in this position for about 3 years, decided I wanted to do something different. I transferred over to the United States Department of Agriculture, working with their SNAP, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, for about 7 years as a program specialist, working on the regional level with states that implement SNAP assistant benefits across the Southeast region. Then I decided I wanted to change, a completely different change, and I applied for a public health advisor position at the Centers for Disease Control in 2013, where I currently am still employed. I work as a federal employment consultant for Liv Consulting and Career Services in my afterlife, after work. But my full-time position, I work as a team leader, supervising public health advisors for the Centers for Disease Control in the Division of HIV Prevention here in Atlanta, Georgia. So I've been with CDC since 2013.
Okay, that is awesome. And thank you for sharing that. Look forward to, well, I know that I said that, and just for everyone that's watching, we're going to follow up. We're going to have a public health careers, interview. We're going to get more of Daphne's story, because I think it's fascinating how she got into the public health world, not really having a public health degree, which I think is useful for other people, because you don't necessarily need to have a public health degree to work at the CDC or any other federal agency, which we'll dive into more. But thank you for that background. Greatly helps us understand the expertise that you're bringing to the table today to share more about the federal application process. Okay, so let's just jump into it. I know we started a little bit late. So the first question that I want to ask is, how does one look for federal public health jobs? What's the process for going about that?
Okay, the best place to start your search is going on USAjobs with an S.gov. That is the website that you can apply for any and every federal employment position that's available in the federal government at any given time. So go to that website, bookmark it. That's going to be your best friend. You can also, too, if there are specific agencies that you want to look for, they usually have career opportunities available on their website, but all of them are going to lead you back to USAjobs, because that is the central repository that they hold all of the jobs for the federal government. I tell people when they're starting their search, know what you want to do, just in general, and you can have 2 or 3 areas that you may want to do your search. You can do your search under public health, if that's an interest of yours. You can do your search under social work. Whatever is the topic, area that you would like to go in, do a search on that topic area, and you will be surprised what jobs will pop up. You can narrow your search based on geographically where you would like to live in the country. Many jobs right now are available with the government in the remote environment. Due to the pandemic, some agencies, well, many agencies made the switch to allow remote working. So you don't have to be bound to a geographical area. If you always wanted to work for an agency, but they had their main headquarters was in DC, like many of the agencies, many of their headquarters are in DC. You can still do a search, and there may be positions that will allow you to work remotely. And being the government, we never know when things may or may not change. You may have to, at some particular point, report to that city, but that's a decision you can make at a later decision. I tell people to, just be as open as you possibly can to all possibilities, especially if you're trying to make that first entry into federal government. The first entry into federal government is the hardest one. Once you get in, it's a little bit easier. It's not a given, but it's a little bit easier to maneuver, which is one of the reasons why I was able to move from agency to agency during my career. But start with that USAjobs.gov website.
Yeah, absolutely bookmark that. If that is the federal jobs and working for a federal agency is something that you are interested in doing, bookmark USAjobs.gov. Like one thing that I always did do when I was in my Master's of Public Health program was that I would just look at jobs and see what they were requiring, see what kind of skills and experiences they're asking for. And then from that, work backwards to see how I can gain those skills and experiences to make myself the strongest candidate for those jobs. So definitely do that. And it's really awesome to hear that there are a lot of agencies that are doing remote work, which is I'm guessing something that's a big leap for a lot of these agencies, but great to see. And just so I've never worked in a federal agency. Just I'm gonna like be as ignorant as possible here to be as helpful as possible. What is a federal agency, and what are some federal agencies that people might have interest in working in from a public health perspective?
Okay, so from a public health perspective, the Department of Health and Human Services, HHS, is the department which houses the majority of the public health slash substance abuse slash Medicare type of positions. So there are departments, which the overall department is Department of Health and Human Services, but under the department, there are a number of agencies. My agency, Center for Disease Control, is under the Department of HHS. Other agencies, SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Administration. It's a lot of acronyms. We have a lot of acronyms.
Too many.
Medicaid, Medicare is under Health and Human Services. So I would say for those who are most interested, if you want to get your first lick at public health, HHS, Department of Health and Human Services, is the department you should look for. But I'm going to give you a caveat. My younger sister, who has a bachelor's degree in public health, recently was hired with AmeriCorps, who is not, quote unquote, a public health agency, but she was able to utilize her education plus experience that she gathered to be able to apply for and obtain a position as an associate portfolio manager. And what she is doing is reviewing grant applications and approving people for programs based on the funding that's available with AmeriCorps. And they do have a public health arm in AmeriCorps, but that's one thing I ask people to do. Don't box yourself, especially when you're just trying to get into the government. Don't box yourself into just one box. Be willing to look at a variety of different positions. See how you can utilize your transferable skills to match yourself up with what they're asking for. You'd be surprised how many skill sets are general across a lot of job titles. So that's why I tell people, read the application. Reading is fundamental. Even if you have to print that sucker out, take the time to read it so that you will know what skills, knowledge, educational background, if needed. You can be very clear about how you're matching your skill sets up to what the job is looking for. And you can also use the buzzwords in the application and put those into your resume so that your resume aligns with. So I tell people to customize your resume. Do not send just a generic one in. It may work, it may not. But the more work that you put into customizing your resume for that position, the better your chances are you will get through the next phase to the hiring manager. So reading, setting aside time each day, week to conduct your job search, and don't wait till the last minute to apply for a position. You usually get a 2-week window in order to apply. Take the whole window of time to submit an application that is worthy of what you bring to the table. Don't wait till the last minute, if you possibly can.
Yeah, absolutely. Put your foot forward, put your best foot forward, and
Yes.
take that initiative from an early place is definitely very important. And I want to talk more about the transferable skills that you mentioned, but before we get to that, so you said that you were working in state government for a state agency, and you switched across to a federal agency. So I wanted to ask, like, what was your thought process in wanting to make that shift? And before you answer that, I just want to let everyone know, if you do have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. We would like this to be as interactive as possible. So if you have any questions about any parts of this process or want us to dig into a little bit more of any of the topics, please put that in chat and leave a like, subscribe if you have not as yet. Greatly appreciate that. But yeah, tell us more about the motivation for you wanting to go into a federal agency.
Okay, when I made the switch, I was still in my late 20s, maybe my early 30s, and I was very ambitious. I wanted to make sure if I was going to make government my career path, I wanted to be at the top tier. So I had spent 8 years with the state of Georgia. I was right there at the cusp of becoming what they call vested, which is 10 years in state employment arena. But I decided to take the leap because I wanted to work on the federal level. I wanted to make a difference through governmental work on a federal level that I just didn't see the opportunity to do on the state level. And state government is much different than federal government work.
Okay, absolutely. And we will dig more into that when I have you on my podcast later on in the official to understand more about that process. But that's definitely helpful. And I think a lot of people do have that same kind of mindset of how do I make impact and how can I do that with the federal government? Granted, there's so many resources and other benefits that you get working for the federal government. Okay, now getting back to transferable skills. Mm-hmm. And one thing I'd like to highlight before you get onto transferable skills is just how important it is to tailor your resume and making sure that you're not just having one resume and applying to a bunch of different jobs, ensuring that you are looking at the job application, seeing what keywords are there and how you can match that to the keywords that you have on your resume, or the experiences and skills and that you can mirror on your application process. So yeah, talk to us more about transferable skills and how that works with federal applications.
Okay, well, I call transferable skills those skills that you will learn on basically any job that you work in. Ability to work in a team atmosphere, being able to be a team player, ability to, let's see, a good example. A lot of times they want to see your abilities in certain positions to write well, to be able to edit, to be able to communicate. Those are some of the soft skills that I believe that we learn on a lot of jobs that we just take for granted won't transfer to another job because it's in a specific area. But there's some very generalized skill sets that you learn on any job that you can transfer over. A lot of times, the subject matter is what you may have to learn, but the general position, you may have already gathered skills working in different jobs. Being able to review a budget, that's a good skill set, be able to develop and review budgets. That's something that you can do in various jobs across a number of subject matters. So when I say transferable skills, look at your resume to look at those things that you could potentially do in a different variety of different jobs, and see how you can match up those skills to what's being asked for in the announcement that you're looking at. Another thing I wanted to highlight is that in USA Jobs, which is a great feature, they will allow you to develop and save up to 5 different resumes. So if you wanted to have a resume, if you have a lot of computer skills, like you know how to do, and computer skills, that's not my arena, but there are some people that are computer experts. If you wanted a resume that really highlighted your computer skill sets, you can have one that is just specifically for that. So if you're looking for jobs in that arena, You already have one. You don't have to start from scratch. Because I tell people, when you're an active federal job search, you need to have resumes that you can pick up and just tweak a little bit. You don't need to be starting from scratch, because they can be lengthy resumes. In the private sector, 1 to 2 pages is what's acceptable in the private sector. My resume right now is 10 pages. In the federal government, they want to see every experience, as long as it is a relevant experience that you can bring to the table to show that you're qualified to do the position. And they don't mind if it is more lengthy than the private sector. They are more than willing to take a resume that has a number of pages to it, just as long as you're just not giving them a whole bunch of fluff. You don't have to give them that McDonald's job that you did while you was in high school. Just as long as the job is relevant to the position that you're trying to apply for. And I tell people, unpaid experiences are just as relevant as paid experience. So put down those internships, put down those volunteer roles that you took on in organizations that you had while you were in college, or that you do in the community. You may run a food bank in your spare time. That's showing that you're able to manage, that you can run an operation, that you have the skill sets to motivate and lead people. This is the type of thing you need to look at every experience that you have to see how you can tailor it to a position that you see, and take from it and put it down on your resume.
Absolutely, absolutely love that. And I think that's really important. And one thing that I advocate and that students know, well, professionals as well, is that they should have some sort of master resume where they have all the experiences, all the skills that you've gotten, all the volunteer work that you've done, so that you can take from that resume and then create shorter resumes, or in your case, maybe just keep everything in that resume and just kind of tailor it a little bit more. And one thing that I also like, and what is also cool, is that USA Jobs, as you said, gives you the ability to develop and save 5 different resumes. And that could be helpful in the sense that, okay, you're focusing on one specific, or like one type of topic area or something like that, or a certain type of role, and one resume is tailored to that. And then you tweak it just a little bit for the certain position that you're going in for. And then for a different position, you have 4 other resumes that you can develop and share to really be helpful. And we do have a question in the chat from Diana Tagbor, and I hope I said your last name correctly. The question is, what kind of programming should you learn when beginning an entry-level job in public health? I'm guessing that's a little bit broader than this, but maybe something that you can also speak to.
Can you repeat the question one more time?
What kind of programming should you learn when beginning an entry-level job in public health?
Like, what type of programming should you seek, like degree or?
No, what I'm taking from this, and you can maybe add on, is because the popular programming in public health are SAS, SBS, SPSS, Starter. I think there are a couple other programs. I don't know if there are any others that stand out to you as ones that are important for entry-level people in public health. And I feel like that's a tough question, because public health is broad, and it could be that you're going in for a biostats type of job, or it could be that you're going for a health educator type of job. So I think, like, from my perspective, just focusing on what is useful and maybe finding out what types of programs do those agencies use, and then build your skills around that. But is there anything that you would share around what kind of programming skills entry-level public health people should have?
And see, that's not my background. I now I know exactly what she's referencing, and I don't have any experiences in those programming fields. But I do know that, if I'm not mistaken, people who go into surveillance or into epidemiology, those are the type of programs that you would utilize. So I'm sorry, I cannot answer that in as well as I would like. But one thing I would like to advise is, as much as you possibly can, if you're able to network while you're in school, to see if you can find people who are doing the work that you want to do, so that you could tap into them to see what advice they could provide to you. I know sometimes it's easier as students to make connections with people that you may meet at conferences, or when you have guest lecturers to come into your classes and into your programs. As much as you possibly can, try to network as soon as you possibly can. Try to find someone who is doing what you want to do, and see if they'll be willing to take you on as a mentee. You know, a mentor-mentee relationship doesn't have to be all consuming. It could be something that you just have like a little check-in relationship where, hey, I'm not going to bother you. I'm not going to impose on your schedule, but if from time to time I could reach out to you to get some advice from you as I move forward. There are so many professionals that will be willing to give, because that's what we, as a industry, public health, we want to give back and to bring up our younger professionals up. So I can't give you the answer, but hopefully you might be able to make a contact and find a mentor that might be able to assist you with that.
I think in not giving an answer, you gave the perfect answer that you can give. It is reaching out to people in agencies and in positions that you are looking to get into, and having those conversations and asking them what programs they're working with, and figuring out how you can gain those skill sets. And even, like, I think the least resistant step there is having an informational interview. And then from there, if you do like bond with this person and see value in it, definitely try to cultivate a mentor-mentee relationship, because that is definitely very helpful. And be sure to keep on dropping your questions in the chat. We are going to answer them as they come in. We do have another one from Cheryl D. Daphne, what are the details of your role as a PHA in the Division of HIV Prevention?
Okay. As a public health, at CDC, public health advisor encompasses a number of different roles. I'm currently not working as a PHA. I am a team lead for a group of PHAs, but I did actually serve in the position at one time for about 8 to 9 years as a public health advisor. And I worked in various subject areas. I worked in HIV prevention. I worked in the Office of Smoking and Health. I worked in suicide prevention. And the common thread with all of those topic areas, the work that I did at CDC, monies would be provided to funded recipients. We would award recipients on an annual basis to conduct activities and to produce deliverables based on work plans and action plans that they would submit to the CDC for our review and approval. And as a public health advisor, what I would do is to monitor and ensure that my recipients met their deliverables every year. CDC is not in the habit of doing activities in the community, but what we do is we fund different recipients based on different topic areas to do the work on our behalf. So as the public health advisor, I would be that liaison to ensure that they receive the monies that they were supposed to from CDC in a timely manner, but also make sure that they deliver to CDC what they said that they would with the monies every year. I go out on site visits. I will actually go out to the different sites to meet their staff, to actually see them doing the work in the field. HIV prevention is the area that I've had the most experience in, and I've really enjoyed working with my recipients to go out and actually see HIV prevention work in action. I would go to different programs, different testing sites, meet with state partners, go to conferences. Really, it's a variety of different work that comes with that position, but it depends on the topic area. Some topic areas, the work is a little bit different, but it has some similarities in it. So I hope that helped and answered the question.
Yeah, and I think it also spoke to the distinction between federal agency type job versus something that is more boots on the ground, grassroots type of job. And I think to that point, it's really understanding what type of work do you want to do? Do you want to be the person that's facilitating a lot of the community work, or are you someone that wants to be in the community doing the work? Those are
very good point. Some people don't find this level as rewarding, because I will say the further away you get from community, the less fulfilling it could be, and you will have to find opportunities to get that feel, if that makes sense. And that was one of the things I enjoyed when I was a public health advisor. My site visits allowed me the opportunity to get back out in the community and kind of help refresh me when I started feeling a little jaded with work.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like, to what extent do you want this type of like work life experience or work experience, or what extent is that of importance to you, and figuring that out before you get into a federal agency? Because yes, it can be a little disconnected, but it's just because you're working on things at a broader level that you can't get into the weeds as much as you would with an organization that's in the community doing the work day in and day out. And then everyone be sure to share with a friend, share this video with a friend. If you have not as yet, you can. It's awesome because this is going to be live on YouTube for the rest of life. So be sure to share it afterwards if you're listening to this and you took value from it. So I know we spoke a little bit about the resume and the importance of having a tailored resume for the different applications that you're applying for. What are some other parts outside of the resume that are important to think about when you're applying for federal jobs?
Okay. One thing I like to tell people, federal employment, applying for federal employment is not an overnight experience. It can really take some time. It could take really up to a year for you to actually see the fruits of your labor. So I tell people, if you are trying to find an immediate job to pay your bills, you may need to diversify your job search. I do not discourage people from looking for federal employment, but just be realistic about how long it may possibly take, because the process is slower. It's slower than in the private industry. So I tell anyone, and it's always easier to look for a job when you have a job. It seems like when you have a job, you can find a job. But when you don't have a job, it looks like nothing is moving. So if you're in current job seeking mode and you do not have employment, do not put all your eggs in federal employment searching. Put some of your eggs in it, but diversify and keep it moving. Because I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. Once you find a job and you have put in something at the federal government level, that's when you're going to find, that's when you're going to get a call back for an interview. It's the craziest thing. Something crazy happened to my younger sister. I mentioned her before early in the podcast. She's working for AmeriCorps now. She found this job maybe around August. I helped her find this job in August. So she's been working for them since we started in the springtime, but she got this position and started in August. Just this week, she got an interview request from IRS for a position that she had put in back in the springtime. So like I said, the process can be slow. So I tell people, just be smart about your job search. Do not put all your eggs in one basket. If you want to be in the public health arena, do a diversification of your job search. Look at community, look at the state level, and look at the federal level. Put in some seed, put some seed in the ground. Something's gonna come up. You just don't know which one is gonna come up first. And if you get an experience with the one that comes up first, if you want to make a strategic move to another position after you've gotten some experience, that's a good move. And you might be ready for the responsibilities in that position when the time comes. So that's one thing I tell people: diversify your career search and and be realistic about your timeline, because it may not come as soon as you want it. But I am sure that when the time is right, you will hear back from those agencies that you apply for.
Absolutely. And I love that candid information there, because I think that is very, very important. Because as you say, I know a lot of people who have had similar experiences as your sister. They've applied to a bunch of state or federal jobs, and then they get hired from a private organization, and then they hear back from those jobs saying, hey, we want to have you for an interview. So really understanding that timeline, and that things move slow with the federal and the state government, and there are a lot of checks and bounds that they have to do before you can come in as an employee. So just take that into consideration.
And interview. Every interview you get, I tell people, do not be afraid to take an interview, because even if you are happy as pie in the job that you are in, interview, because it allows you the opportunity to get in front of people you don't know, answer questions on the spot, and it sharpens your tools. You can always turn down a position.
Absolutely. It's better to have the position and then turn it down than to not have a position at all.
Yes, yes.
So I absolutely agree with that. And if you are thinking about going into federal applications or federal public health applications or agencies, definitely reach out to Liv Career and Consulting Services. Their link should be in the description of this video, or if you're listening to this on a podcast, it will be in the description of the podcast. So be sure to check them out if you need some more support around your application there. And then when someone is looking at, they're thinking about applying for a federal agency job. I know we spoke about creating and tailoring your resume. We spoke about knowing the timeline, and that you have to really think about, okay, this is something that might take a longer time than I expected to do. What are some other things that people should think about or should know before going into a federal application?
Okay, one thing, excuse me, I said a little dry cough that's still remaining. One thing I tell people is that the salary that is attached to the grade and step, and that's another thing people do not understand, the grade and step title label that is placed on every job. You will be offered the lowest, if you're coming into a position that has a GS, and I'm just throwing out an example, a GS 11/12 attached to it. If you are offered the job, depending on whether or not you're an internal candidate or an external candidate, if this is your first time coming into government, that's probably going to be the easiest for me to explain. When you come in, unless you have some experience that you can justify a higher salary, you're going to come in at a GS step 1. Salaries are not often negotiable at the federal level. I always tell people, you will not get rich with the federal government, but the work is steady. And if you get into a position that has growth and promotional potential, you will move up the ladder. And if you continue with federal government, you can land in a position where you make a good salary in a stable industry. Federal government is stable, but you're not going to get rich. But I tell people, do not think that you're going to come in and with your salary requirements, because they will tell you no. So you have to be very realistic too about when you're looking at jobs, can I live with this salary? Because depending on how well you want to get into what is your motivation? If you really want to make that switch, you may have to be willing to take a decrease in order to come up in a couple of years with an increase. So you really need to know your motivation for getting into federal government. It's not going to always be that I'm going to get the salary that I would like coming in. The grade step system can be a deterrent if you are coming from a position making $150,000. You may have to take a downgrade, but with the hopes of coming back up. I hope that helps somebody out there.
Yeah, definitely helpful. And I think it's important you noted that, because it is something where you can go online and look up the salary ranges for these, or salary ranges for these type of positions. No, once you know like what grade the job is set at, which makes sense.
And also too, based on the location, there's locality pay. Like in Atlanta, the locality pay is different than the locality pay in Mississippi because of the urban area of Atlanta. So depending on where you live, also too, the GS 11 step 1 pay may look different in one area than in another.
Okay, that's a good point, and a nuance to look into as well. Because when I was applying to state level jobs in Alaska, there's a additional boost they put on salary because you're living in Alaska. I'm guessing most people just don't want to live there.
Hard to find people to work there.
Exactly. Are there benefits or other things that are negotiable in the federal process, or is everything pretty standard with salary? I'm guessing like health insurance is going to be good and all those other things. Are there other benefits that people negotiate typically?
No, not really. I mean, when I really say that the government benefits package is set, when you come in the first 3 to 5 years, I believe there's only so many hours of sick and annual leave that you're going to get just based on the number of years you've been in the government. So, excuse me, very little negotiating room. I have heard that they've loosened it a bit over the last few years. I think in order to remain competitive, they've had to try to loosen up their ability to negotiate, but it's very little wiggle room. So, and I've heard of people, because they didn't get the salary that they wanted, they turned down the position. They've gotten federal employment positions, but because they couldn't get the salary they wanted, they turned them down. So that is real.
Yeah, important considerations to really think about while you are thinking about like federal or state level opportunities. And I just wanted to raise up that Sherelle said that there is also government consulting firms, and yeah, there are many consulting firms out there that contract with the CDC and other type of agencies like that to do a lot of this work. I can't think of any at the top of my head right now, but you could probably easily find them.
We do have a number of consulting companies that work within CDC in different centers. You may have a variety of different companies that do have contractors. That's what we call contractors. And that's one way that you can get experience working in the federal government through a consulting company, contractor company, and take those opportunities. If you're wanting just to be able to get the experience, get closer into federal government, take every opportunity that you can find in order to get the experience. But our contractors they work with us, but they're not equal to us. That makes it. There's a difference between the FTE, the full-time federal employee, and the contractor. We work hand in hand on a lot of instances, but there's some areas that there is a line of delineation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that I have had people on my podcast who have worked as consultants on the contracting side.
Mhm.
And from that experience and the networks and the relationships that they have built, have been able to shift over onto the federal side pretty seamlessly. Granted, you still have to go through like all the checks and bounds and the application process, but like just being in that space where you're able to create those relationships, create those networks, really understand what the work is, while better understanding what is going on from the federal government side. And please feel free to ask your last questions. We'll probably try to close up here in the next 5-10 minutes. But feel free to ask any questions that you might have, and feel free to connect with Daphne on LinkedIn and follow up and ask questions there, or connect with Liv Career Consulting to follow up there. And be sure to like this, share with a friend. Greatly appreciate it. Thank you, Jasmine, who shared NORC or NORC, ICF, and Mathematica as some of examples of those government consultant firms. And in your experience working with people that are trying to get into federal agencies, what has been the most difficult part for people in that process?
I think the length of time. I think people come into it with unrealistic expectations, and knowing that it's work. It really is work. I tell people that jobs come out every day. I suggest that people find one day out of the week in order to um, do a job search if they're an active job search. Most positions close in a 2 week period, but some positions close in a week, and jobs come out every day. So it depends on how strong your hustle is, as to how many seed you want to put in the ground. When I'm in active job search, I'm looking on USA Jobs every 2 to 3 days, but it depends on how strong your hustle is. Um, but it's exciting. You put in the seeds, you put in the jobs, you get responses. Sometimes you get a response quickly, sometimes a response takes a little time. Um, but it's just something exciting when you get that notification that your name has been given to the hiring manager. Now that's a whole nother podcast. Sometimes you might make the cert. That's what we call the certificate. You might make the cert, but you might not get called in for an interview, and that could be discouraging too. But I just tell people you have to have a tenacity in order to do a job search, and just be willing to stick with it. And the rewards are great when they come about, but you can't be easily discouraged. If you're easily discouraged, this may not be the job. The federal employment may it's interesting. I will say that it's just interesting.
Yeah, that I think that's to say the least. And in your transition, once again, like talking about your transition into federal agency work, what were the transferable skills or the things that you tried to highlight to share, especially granted that you didn't have education skill set in public health, quote unquote. What were those things that you focused on there?
Well, because in the area that I was going to in CDC, the HIV prevention field, they work with a number of community-based organizations that I did have skill sets that would help me to work with them. I had counseling background. I had skill sets in grant writing. Part of this working with our community-based organization is to help them be able to think about how they can seek additional funding in order to continue their services, because CDC funding is only finite. It's not going to be forever. Usually they award on a 5-year cycle. So I was able to bring experience that I had from a position I had as a grant writer to be able to work with my recipients to encourage them to seek additional funding in the community to help support their program if and when CDC had to back out funding wise. If they had programs on how to provide navigational services to their recipients, having to navigate community resources. I had experience working as a crisis specialist in the community at the very beginning of my career, being able to do discharge planning with clients once they left my crisis stabilization unit. So I was able to talk to my recipients about how they could find services to help support their recipients, housing, food. I had experience having worked with food programs. I knew what food program, assistance programs were out in the community, medical services to help ensure that they continued on with medical services, especially if they found them to be HIV positive. So many of the skills that I picked up in different jobs along the way, I was able to bring forth and utilize with working with my recipients. So I say no job, you can always gain a skill set and bring something to the table from every job that you've had. And it will come back up one day.
I cannot agree with that anymore. Like that is great advice, because I feel like we have to pull from all the experiences that we've had to make ourselves to show that we're both a strong candidate for the job, but make ourselves stand out from the other candidates, to say, hey, like, even if I don't have this specific topic area knowledge, I've done similar types of work, but with a different topic area, and showing that you're able to do that, and you can learn the topic area and be able to use the skill sets in this topic area to be successful and to bring about impact in that role.
Yeah, if you can make the links for them, don't expect them to make the connection. You have to make the connection for them. So that's why I tell everybody, interview. Go on every interview you can, so that you can learn how to make those connections for people.
Awesome. And this will be the last question. So speaking about that interview process, what are things that people should really think about while they are going to go into interviews for federal agencies?
Most of the time, it's a panel interview. Most of the positions that I have interviewed for on the federal level, they were panel, 3 people giving me 1 to 2 questions. So you have to be able to work a room, in the sense of be able to answer questions coming from multiple people. They will allow you to ask for questions to be repeated. So you can always ask for questions to be repeated. And I tell people to listen carefully to the questions and answer every part of the question, because you are being scored on every aspect of the question that you answer. So answer the question in full, try to give examples, provide scenarios, be able to link, to be able to give success stories, and just really be able to talk about your experiences in a way that it tells a story, that you can interweave your experiences with the skill sets and what you potentially can bring to the table. And it's a skill. It takes time to sharpen your skill sets. So if you are one of those people who are shy, go to Toastmasters. Learn how to sell yourself, because you only have a finite. If you are lucky to get past the HR process and get in front of a hiring manager, you want to take advantage of that opportunity. So you need to be able to sell yourself in 30 to 45 minutes, answering about 3 to 7 questions.
I love that. I think that goes right back to your point of like taking all the interviews that you can, because it really is a skill set in itself to interview and be comfortable interviewing and being able to share your experiences, as well as, I like that you highlight, to answer every part of the question that they're asking, because many times you might get caught up on one part but forget to answer another part. So maybe like you can take a book or a notebook or something inside, so you can write down notes to ensure that you're hitting on all the points that you really need to hit on there. Well, thank you so much, Daphne, for coming on and sharing your wealth of knowledge. I know that we will follow back up so that everyone could hear more about your public health story and how you got involved in the work that you're doing, and get some more tips around not only the federal application process through your story, but how you were able to use those transferable skills and gain those transferable skills through the positions that you had. And before we go, I knew that Liv Career Consulting Services is going to be hosting an event. I believe it's going to be in January. So I wanted to leave a little bit of space for you to share a little bit more about that.
Oh, thank you so much, Amari. And thank you so much for inviting me. And I do apologize for the dry cough, but hopefully when I come back, I'm going to be smooth. But just quickly, we are going to be having a webinar on the Public Health Associate Program, PHAP, which is the acronym for a entry-level position that CDC advertises every year for those that are coming out of school either on a bachelor's level or a master's level. And it doesn't just have to be in public health. They look at all degree offerings. So it just doesn't have to be in public health. But what it does, it allows you to come into, if you're selected, you are assigned to a state jurisdiction. You would have to be willing to move to another state possibly. But you would be embedded in their state health department for up to 2 years, working on the public health level, on that state level with a state jurisdiction, as well as working with CDC professionals. So you get the experience of both worlds. You do come in as a GS5, the first year. You go to a GS7 the second year. So if that's something that you feel like anyone in your audience feels as if that might be something that they would like to pursue to gain some experience, some entry-level experience, and the name recognition of having CDC on your resume so early in your public health career can also be a game changer when you're doing your job search. So we're going to be doing that early January. The application is slated to come out late January, early February. So I did want to get that information out to all my potentials before the application opens up. So thank you so much for letting me share that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's it's a great resource, and well, you all are being a great resource for the PHAP program, because I think a great resource for the students that are interested in the PHAP program, or recent graduates, early professionals, because I know I've many friends who are in the PHAP program or recently starting the PHAP program, and just the experience in networks and all the skills that you're gaining from that can be very helpful and pivotal in your early public health career. And I think that just the connections is very helpful, as well as being able to put that on your resume is something that's definitely very useful. And I haven't had someone talk about the PHAP program in a while, so hopefully I can try to get someone who is in the program right now to talk more about their experiences very soon. But yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. I will be sure to share that whenever that information is solidified. But be sure to follow Liv Career and Consulting Services on LinkedIn and on Instagram so that you can be updated when that does come out. And once again, thank you, Daphne, for coming out. I hope that you're feeling better, that we are able to have a better, well, not a better conversation, but that you are feeling better and we can come and have a great conversation around your career story in the near future. Be sure to like this video if you're not as yet. I know there are 9 people watching this live right now and only 5 likes. So 4 people owe me a like. So please do that. And I will see you all sometime soon. Be sure to follow me, subscribe, and appreciate you all. Peace.
Thank you.
Perfect.